Welcome to Storytellers, the podcast where we hear the tales and journeys of inspiring members and supporters of NSA Houston. I'm your host, Beth Rohani, and here everyone has a unique story. So let's get nice and cozy as we spotlight our next storyteller. Lejeune is an accomplished leadership training expert and an award-winning author, revered for his talent in empowering top-tier talent, reducing turnover, and fostering high-performance teams for over 25 years. He is the president for Lighting the Path, authorized partner with the Jill Hickman Companies, and our very own past president for NSA Houston. His presentations offer practical insights drawn from real-world experiences, delivered with humor and an exceptional knack for extracting timeless truths with everyday situations. Please join me in welcoming Mike to this episode of Storytellers. Mike, we are so excited to have you as one of our guests today. Welcome.
Well, Beth, so it's an honor to be able to spend time visiting with you. Being a part of the National Speakers Association NSA community literally has been a game changer in my career. So for us to be able to spend some time talking about that journey, it's an honor.
Well, and the honor is all mine because you were the first mentor that I connected with whenever I decided to become involved in the National Speakers Association's Houston chapter. And you definitely have helped guide the way for me, and I know many others. And so I'm excited to jump right in and just learn a little bit more about who you are, what you've done, what the future holds for Mike. So let's just jump right in. So just kind of tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your past. What were some of the things that you've done to kind of accelerate your career to get to where you are today?
Well, I was born, no, I'm not going to go quite that far back. Beth, as I was thinking about this journey, the candle was lit inside me to be a speaker at a time that I literally was a white-knuckled speaker. In other words, I had to give a training class every morning with this new team I had been inherited. And I had to, I mean, literally, I would be like in the bathroom, nervous, just every day. So the vice president stood up one day and said, if you want to go anywhere in this organization, you need to learn to speak in front of people. And out of the 300 people in the company at the time, I was the only one who took them up on it because I went and joined Toastmasters. And for 10 years, spent time in the Toastmasters organization. And I have to say, it was probably one of the, I'm going to round things off here, probably one of the top 5 decisions I made from a speaking standpoint, because for 10 years, I got a chance to practice the art of giving a presentation, whether it be giving it or getting feedback and evaluating and just that whole communication cycle. But what took place with that, it lit a fire in me to say, I wonder if I can make a career out of this. And I ended up getting invited by somebody who you're going to be speaking to soon, Jim Jacobus. Yes. Jim was somebody I hired as a speaker at a conference I was chairing. I was conference chair for, matter of fact, it was 9/11, whenever the whole marketplace was crashing. And I was in charge of the conference and needed to find a speaker to come in and revitalize and put people back on, on the path to move forward. And at the end of it, Jim pulled me aside and he said, I've watched you introduce, I've watched you facilitate, I've watched you kind of lead the meeting. Why are you not doing what I do? And he became a catalyst for me to be able to eventually one day go from there to where I am now. Jim told me about going to the NSA conference, what we call Influence Today. And I walked away from that just lit on fire. And Jim said, if you like this, now you need to go get involved in Houston. And so I came back home and I went to the Houston chapter. And here's a wonderful thing for me, is I got a chance to meet people like you. In other words, I met people who are high energy, who were passionate about wanting to build a career in the art of communication. Because see, what the NSA, they call it tagline, if you will. What NSA focuses on is no longer keynote speakers. What we focus on are experts who use the spoken word to influence lives. So now, I have I've now been able to build a business called Lighting the Path. I sold our company because I was in the executive search industry for 25 years. Sold that business, as my wife said, for you to go do what God created you to do, which is to help leaders elevate their ability to engage their teams to raise performance level.
That's incredible and so inspiring to hear, because a lot of people are so hesitant to make that leap, to just kind of get out of their comfort zones and be able to do something different. And for you to be able to do that definitely shows the perseverance and the resiliency. But I know along the way it hasn't been easy. And so, what would you say were some of the challenges that you faced that you overcame along the way?
You know, the first one was picking a lane. And the reason why is because I wanted to be a speaker, and I'm going on, you know, and I wanted to be a motivational speaker. But what does that mean? What does that look like? And I had to go back in and really take a look at not what was the speaker I wanted to be, but what was the message I wanted to deliver. And more importantly, it took me a few years to be able to recognize what's the problem that my message is capable of solving. And that's how I ended up in the leadership space, because I did working with leaders and recruiters and salespeople, and still do that today. But the difference is Lighting the Path is about helping leaders increase the performance level of their people. And over the 10-year period of time, I developed, you know, not just talks, but tools and resources to be able to go in and be a keynote speaker, a workshop facilitator, and an executive coach. Instead of building a three-legged stool to stand on, so that I've got multiple ways from a revenue standpoint of coming in. And when you ask me what the big challenge is, the first one was for me to figure out who's Mike Lejeune, and what is my story, what is my message, what is the way that I look at life and situations and circumstances, so that I could build an audience of people who might want to connect with my outlook and the way that I present things. And that's how the business evolved. So it's narrowing things down and finding that lane.
And I love that. And I want the audience members to hear this and really take note of what Mike is saying, because so frequently than not, we are, as entrepreneurs, good at a lot of things. And so we decide that, you know, for me, I'm an entrepreneur. I deal with leadership, I deal with mindset, and I'm a first generation Iranian American. And so you have all of these elements that you feel like people can connect with, but ultimately picking that lane was a very big challenge for me. And I know recently we had Lois Creamer, who came and presented in our October program, where she said, pick a lane. And how do you pick a lane? So maybe let's dig a little bit deeper in that. What were some of the efforts that you put in finally getting it honed down to what your lane really is?
Yeah, I think the first part for me, Beth, was to fall out of love with my speech. In other words, I got a good talk, right? I had a good story, you know, because I'm a storyteller. I use that to make things come alive. I enjoy it. I come from South Louisiana. Our big thing was sitting around the dinner table, and we got together and just telling stories. And so I was raised in it. And so it's a key component when I'm delivering a message. You make a point for the head, a story for the heart. But the challenge was I had these great stories, and I had to literally put them aside and recognize it's not the story, but it's the message that solves a problem. My first company I came up with was called Simple Leadership. I had Simple Leadership. That was my DBA. My wife hated that, by the way. And she goes, it's not simple. I said, no, that's the whole thing. It's not simple. Okay. Excuse me. It's not easy, but it is simple. It's just not easy. But I had to explain what that meant. And people go, oh. But what's interesting is I had a DBA, an LLC rather, called Lighting the Path. And that was the LLC I created, that a DBA of Simple Leadership sat underneath it. And then one day I looked at this thing and I'm going, why am I not using my LLC as a name? So I went back to my wife and I said, what about if I kill this and I start calling what I do Lighting the Path? And she goes, I like that. And then as I started talking to people, I started saying the name of my company is Lighting the Path, I'd literally see them physically kind of step in. Well, that came from a trigger from being able to be open to my wife saying, why are you doing this? It's being involved with people enough to where you're giving a talk, like I did in one of my very first major keynotes that I did.
One of the things that I hear is that there is consistency behind what you do. It's not just partial, but when you go into it, it's just like building any other brand, your name, your logo, your website, the brand colors, and the image that you portray ultimately helps your audience build trust in
Hmm.
what it is that you're able to do. And I know through not only the branding side of it, but also the storytelling side of it, it's a huge component because, yes, we are storytellers and communication is one of our superpowers. And so I know by now you've mastered the art of storytelling, but how do you believe that storytelling impacts people's lives?
Oh, it's massive. What happens is we process information. Like if I do this with audience. When I said the word red, what image pops into your mind?
Stop sign.
There you go. Okay, that's the number one answer, by the way. You know,
Yes.
it's stop sign, fire truck, apple. My point behind it is when we're speaking to people, what we're literally doing is crafting images in their brain. Because if you want somebody to change, you got to speak to their heart, not their head. And stories helps people literally get a chance to clarify and understand the point that you're trying to make. So you can take the same story and you can bend it depending upon the point you're trying to make, depending on how you're delivering things. It may be something about overcoming fear. It could be something about taking a chance. It could be something about the people that are coming alongside of you, depending upon how you shape it. But that story is going to help that message come alive.
Well, and storytelling, I think, goes in multiple ways. It's not just the verbal aspect of it, but it's the written aspect of it. And I know you're an award-winning author, and I just recently got one of your autographed books, so I'm excited about that. Thank you. But tell us about storytelling and how it ties with authoring a book, and what are some of the things that people who are considering, some of our audience members, in writing a book, might want to consider when it comes to storytelling through their work and their projects.
I'm sitting at my breakfast table one day with a friend and Tommy, and we started regaling. I started being a storyteller. I started telling what we call Nikki's stories of my daughter. But it was not a story of my daughter, a story of my daughter and me. And as a father who knew nothing about raising a girl, some of the really kind of idiotic things that I did, just not knowing. And then I still remember my friend leaned over and says, "That's your book." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, It's stories about you and Nikki." And I stopped and looked at it. And I went out and I said, So I called Nikki and I said, "Hey, you want to write a book together?" And she said, "Yeah." What I did is I wrote my thoughts about an experience that I either heard of or saw, or actually dealt with myself, and wrote about it, wrote my perception on it. So it wasn't a book report. It was my view of what that situation is. Share the story. What's my take on it? So it sharpens your. And so what happened was I recognized I had a number of Nikki stories in there. Well, Nikki heard what I was doing, and she was in college and about to go off to vet school. So she started writing a little blog. And that's exactly what we ended up doing. We said, let's start writing a book before you go off to vet school. And that summer we wrote and we sent emails back and forth. And so we did is we took stories of our life, our perspective, and we just kept honing them and we kind of sent them back and forth. And so by the time within about 4 months, we ended up having the manuscript put together of A Father's Love, the bridge that changes lives forever. I think as speakers, uh, for most of us, the art of being able to take the spoken word and convert it into the written word is the muscle that can be developed. And there's also resources that are out there, people that if you craft it, they can take and edit it for you and polish it up and do some cool things with it.
Do you use a lot of AI during your creation, your content
Now,
creation?
I'm just now learning that. It's like I did when you talk about it, here's where content proposal writing, right? Somebody says, we'd like for you to speak. We're thinking 3 or 4 speakers. Can you write something up about why you would fit us and what we're doing? I put my thing together and sent it out to a behavioral healthcare organization. And when I did that, after I wrote reading, I said, I got to jazz this up a little bit more. And so I took it and I dropped it into ChatGPT and put some, but I don't know what you call them, filters around it or something. And said, okay, take this and bend it for the behavioral science field. And I still remember, make me sound intelligent.
I like it. I like it. The
And
prompts.
it reshaped it. And I mean, it's like it put language, put statistics in there. I mean, I was blown away by that. And Illiterate is one of the better, proposals or sort of info about who am I and what am I talking about? Why am I unique to this area? And that opened a door for me to speak to about 120 chief human resources offices from around the country that gathered together a national conference.
I think at this point in our game, there are so many tools and so many resources that we have that allow us to be able to get the content fine-tuned, but ultimately what I sense is the AI technology doesn't bring out the actual heart of the story. It doesn't bring that content that you fell in love with to then go produce. It produces the content that you ultimately fall in love with.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of what I heard between the things that you've done is vulnerability. How much of that requires vulnerability when it comes time to storytelling?
Massive, massive. I have found what has resonated most with the audiences I've been blessed to speak with is when I've shared where I failed. My failures I had. It resonates with them, and it's hard to go there because you're kind of afraid that they will think less of you because, oh my God, I failed, he didn't do this. But it's the ability to recognize that you're trying to help somebody work through a problem, achieve something, accomplish something. Get kicked off the high school basketball team, and I got kicked off because I crossed a line that you're not supposed to as an athlete. Not supposed to as high school, but as an athlete. And I went out one night and I had a drink on my birthday because I was with a bunch of college guys and I was trying to act important. And the coach found out, not about me, but about 4 other guys that were going out and getting drunk as our football team was pursuing the state playoffs. And he came to me, asked me the question. He said, I heard some people have been drinking, and I knew about it. And he looked at me and said, have you? And I said, yes. And that afternoon, he called a meeting and he kicked us all off the team. I had 3 college scouts looking at me at that time. And the hardest part of it, though, was going to tell my dad, who was a prolific athlete, of what had just happened. And I can still picture the disappointment in his eyes that he's standing out at the horse stable. And we never talked about that for 25 years. Until one day I'd gone to this meeting about what does it mean to be an authentic man, biblical man. And it talked about if there's somebody in your life you need to ask for forgiveness for, go and do that. It's healing. And I drove to Louisiana and I told him, I am so sorry for what took place. First time in 25 years we'd ever talked about it. But and here's the message that goes behind it, is that I was blessed. I won a contest when I first started speaking for the American Idol of recruiting trainers. And the prize was studying with the guru of the recruiting industry, Danny Cahill. And I got a chance to spend 2 days in his office with him just mentoring me. And he interviewed me. He said, tell me about all the pitfalls in life. Subject we're talking about, vulnerability. And when I got to that story, he goes, you got to use that story. You got to use that. I said, there is no way I'm ever going to tell another human being about this. Well, what's interesting, Beth, is that over the years, when I finally started talking about that and using that, it's, people now refer to it as Mike's basketball story. But because the end of it is this: I drove to Louisiana, which is about a 3.5 hour drive and filled with I'm reliving all the shame and stuff. But I sat down with my dad at the dining table and I said, Pop, I'm really sorry about what happened when I was in high school. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, remember when I got kicked off the basketball team? He goes, oh yeah. I said, I'm sorry. He goes, what do you mean? He said, look at who you are today. Look at who you are today. Look at the father you've become. I know what the son you've become. Look at the husband you have. And more importantly, he spoke these words into me. He said, look at the man you've become. Best words a father could ever tell a son. And literally reshaped my life. because I stopped trying to spend time proving to him and re-earning his worth. I already had, but I had to let go of the past to move into the future. That's taking something in your life. That's where you fall.
For sure. And I think the impact in that is the fact that you held on to that for such a long time. And
That's right.
most of us do hold on to that. And ultimately, sometimes it just feeds us in a powerful way where it sets the trajectory for our future. But then sometimes you dwell on it so much that it impacts us negatively. And it seems that this instance in your life helped you stay guided, stay grounded, stay aware of where your downfalls were, and just continue to work towards improving them, which leads me to my next question, and it's a great segue for it. Who have been some of your role models or inspirations in life that have kind of guided you along the way?
Wow. I mean, a couple of names that jump up. One is one we've already talked about, Jim Jacobus, because um, he was a huge inspiration for me because as a role model, I just watched how he was. I knew Jim from just sitting at a coffee table talking to him. And when he got up to speak, the same guy who was at the coffee table was the guy who was in front of an audience. Same guy, different mechanics he might use to deliver his point. But it was an authenticness of him. And the second is another name we mentioned is passed on, Rob Pennington. Rob, I mentioned about the fact that I went through a 13-year cycle where I had massive panic attacks. That's how I actually met Rob. He was a huge force in helping me understand what I was going through and helping me crack that cycle that I was in. But it's having him and helping me shepherd me through that, and then going from that to literally becoming in the last most recent stage of the last 10 years, just becoming good friends. The third one that pops into mind from is I mentioned in my bio. I'm part of the Jill Hickman Authorized Partner Network, and Jill has been such an influence on me because of the fact that she, as we interact with it, she has this gift of making me feel safe while I stretch. And so, which leads me to the fourth name. I could keep going down this list, the fourth and fifth. Lou Heckler is a Cabot Robert Award winner, member of the National Speakers Association, is literally one of the best storytellers that I've ever seen. And every year I would pick somebody that I would study with for a year, and I would invest money. And so I'd watch Lou on stage. And I said, that's the style. This is the guy I want to connect with. And I literally flew to Florida and spent a weekend with him. And we went and reshaped materials and stories and stuff and fit in line. And the last name is that I walked with him a lot, but he's been such an inspiration to me because I'm going to be talking about him at our next Speakers Academy. And that's Giovanni Livera, because he was the first person that I saw speak when I went to the Winter Lab, the very first NSA Winter Lab that I attended. And he was the key person. And he talked about audience impact moments. And he walked us through this program of how do you chart out a program where you're taking people on this journey and using different ways to engage and make the audience feel connected to the material using story and humor and music and just different situations. It literally taught me to think like as an orchestra score. And so those are all people that have helped. I can keep on going. There's a lot more than 5, but those are the first 5 names that popped off the top of my head. So if anybody's listening to this and know that your name probably should have been on here as a possibility.
It's wonderful to be able to have that influence to surround you. And I find that the National Speakers Association is a very dynamic support system that allows incoming new members or even seasoned veterans hone in on their speaking or their consulting or coaching, even authoring careers. And so, along with your journey, I know you've been connected to many influential people, but what advice would you give aspiring members who are looking to get into the business of what we do? And, I know that there's tools that I've learned about. One, you just mentioned Speakers Academy, where you and our current president, Eric Aroka, are leading and instructing it. But then there's e-speakers, there is CSP designation, which it stands for Certified Speaking Professional. Maybe share with some of our audience members some of those tools and those resources and the advice that you would give to aspiring members.
It's the first piece of advice I'd give is speak often, period. All right. In other words, take the financial piece of it, put it aside, and speak often. Because the only way that you will get better is by being in front of a group of people to speak. I don't care if it's 2 people or 200 or 2,000. Speak often. The second is to fall in love with technology. Now, what I mean by that is that the art of having a business of speaking is much more than being in front of an audience. It's about building a business that gets you in front of an audience. Because there's a lot of people. Matter of fact, I mentioned Toastmasters, and that journey, I can think of a number of people who said, my God, I wish I could, I want to be a professional speaker one day. The challenge is you have to build a business around it. And you brought that up at the very beginning. You have to learn, how do you create a marketing machine that puts your brand, your persona, as well as your message in the market? You're hired by the content, and you're hired by your unique way of delivering that content. And so in today's time, just being good on stage isn't good enough. The third thing that comes to mind right now, if I were going to do it all over again, what would I do differently? I would focus on my CRM system sooner. It's your customer relationship management system. LinkedIn is not a CRM system. I think we need to be heavily involved with LinkedIn, but we have to have some type of a system that can help us manage our clients and our projects and manage our prospects, that when we meet somebody, we can drop them into a database of some type so that we can have a consistent way of reaching out to them. You can do that through posting using social media with connections on LinkedIn, but it jumps up to a whole different level. If I've got an email list and a text list that I can send information out to people that I choose to, either on a one-on-one basis or within a particular group. Those are the three things that come off. The CSP that you're talking about, if you're getting started in the business, Certified Speaking Professional is a credentialing program that you go through that has to do with how much you have to earn a certain amount of money as a speaker. You have to give a certain number of talks within a year's period of time. And you have to do that consistently, 5 out of 10 years. And so because of that, it's a daunting thing to go and pursue. And I'm still in the process of pursuing mine, mainly because of all the the documentation and stuff that goes with it. So I think it's something you set as a goal, because I've got that. You pursue it. It won't help you launch your career. It's your CRM system. It's getting your marketing, and it's getting a really honing and practicing and giving a talk. That the talk itself becomes the lead generator for you. To give an example, I've got 2 calls with somebody from my coaching business that saw me speak a couple of weeks ago at a conference that I was at, and they reached out afterwards. Hey, can I get some time with you? That's a talk working for you. The rule is that when you give a talk, does it generate 1 to 2 leads that come out of it?
That's amazing, Mike. And one of my favorite things that I think you touched on is the fact that, being prepared from the very beginning and having your foundation in place will help give you that structure along the way. Because, like you, once you hit the ground running, the opportunities can potentially come. And if you don't have a way of managing that and marketing that and being able to leverage that, then it only takes those opportunities away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Versus giving you the power to be able to elevate. And I like the fact that you've now found resources to delegate to, because the more you're able to delegate, the more you're able to free up your time in order to do what it is that you're good at, versus focusing in on the administrative day-to-day type of things that maybe not all entrepreneurs are good at. And I guess what I'm hearing from it is, don't be afraid to reach out and get support. If you don't know the answers, it's perfectly fine. But surround yourself with those individuals that are experienced, that do have that wealth of knowledge, who are there to be able to guide and support you. And I know the National Speakers Association is definitely a tremendous tool for that. And so your involvement throughout the years and also being past president, what has the National Speakers Association done for you, and how has this community supported your growth throughout this time?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. If you ask, you think back on the question you asked me, which was, who are the people that have been most influential in your walk? Okay, there's nobody on that list that's not a member of the National Speakers Association. And what NSA is built around is that the marketplace that we deal with is a pie. And what we want to do is we want to grow that market as much as we can, because as the market that we operate in grows, then our piece of the pie gets bigger. So if I'm only worrying about my piece of pie to protect it or figure out how do I get to it, but if I can be a part of a community that, let's make each other better, let's trade information, what can I do to help you? Then what takes place is the pie gets bigger. And what I've learned over the years, both within NSA and outside of it, the more that I push away, the more that comes back to me. The more that I can reach out and serve somebody, the more that it gets returned in ways that are a lot of times exceed my wildest expectations. And so to me, that's what NSA does. It's an incubator. It's what I call, and you've heard me say this because when I was president, serving as president, my mandate was NSA is a dream factory. It's a dream factory. And then I stick Jim Jacobus's tagline underneath it, which is live the dream, do the work. That if you're willing to go and you're willing to do the work, you're willing to try to do something a little bit differently, willing to come to a meeting and learn something and go ahead and find a way to implement as quick as you can. You take a dream and you shift it from dream to process to reality. And to me, it's the safety net that we operate within. I've never experienced that in any other type of business situation that I've been exposed to.
It's so powerful, and it's definitely, building a dream ultimately of, an environment of like-minded people. They have similar interests, they have similar experiences, and share different perspectives. And I think as people who are looking to grow professionally, personally, you have to be able to show up. And I just recently did my podcast with Sherry Wick, who's also on our board, and she's our secretary this year. And her thing was show up. You just have to show up, because the more you show up, the more you expose yourself to the different sources and opportunities that are out there for you to be able to grow. And definitely NSA is a tool to be able to do that. So along the way, you've had lots of wins, it seems like. Now we're wrapping up 2023. It's been a great so far year in our servantship with the board, and I know that next year is going to be amazing too. So what were some of the wins that you accomplished in 2023, and what are some of the future aspirations that we have to look forward to with Mike in 2024?
A couple of them that were just was blessed. When I think back on it, the book that I wrote, Equipped to Lead, in 2023, I was able to move it from book to actually build out some programs that I was able to deliver. We're using the source material from that and delivering it in the form of a workshop. It actually went so far as that I was invited to fly to California, work with a company that was roughly about a $2 billion company, brought their leaders from around the country together, even some from overseas, for a strategic planning workshop. And they asked me if I could come and do a 1-hour program on building a culture of engagement. And so using the material in the book, came in and crafted that. And because when I was scratching my, how do I do this in 1 hour? It's like, I don't have 4 hours. I don't have all day from a workshop standpoint. That's the amount of time I had on their agenda. And it was, like you said, it was, Sherry's words were great. It says, I had to go to that place of, okay, I can make it happen. I don't know how, but I'll take steps in that direction. By the way, that's actually that's the title of the book that I'm writing right now that'll release in 2024. When you ask about what's coming down the road, the book is Move the Ball. It's creating a playbook that leads. It's creating steps that lead to extraordinary performance. Because that's my mindset. If you look over my shoulder, I've got I guess this shoulder over here. It's move the ball every day. Stand up and move the ball. And so I've gotten some leverage around that. With the coaching clients, it's become part of our vocabulary every week. What did you do this week to move the ball? How are you going to move the ball next week? It just kind of shapes our mindset. So that was a new growth, new step in sort of the direction that I'm headed in. When I look at 2023, find a word that's going to resonate with you. And when I ask you, is there a word that comes to mind for you, Beth, when you think about 2024, about what you want that to be, do, or have?
Yeah, it's driven.
Yeah.
I'm fully driven in 2024 to accomplish a lot of the goals that I've set for myself. And, staying focused, staying resilient, having that perseverance all goes with the fact that I need to be driven.
Yeah. And so my suggestion on that then is get a sticky, stick it on your monitor so that you see it. Because what will happen is that you'll sit there and somebody will distract you. Somebody will come in with this amazing team of people you have supporting you, working with you, will knock you off course or something, and you got to come back here. When you see that, okay, so for you, your definition, whatever that means, what step can I take to make sure that I can live out the word driven? That's my question every day for 2024. What am I doing today that's bold? What do I need to stop doing? Be bold about stop doing. So that's to me, when I look about what's that, it's you've now joined my list of accountability partners. Now when you see me next year, you can say, how's your book coming, Mike? But that's another thing I've learned. When you tell people what you're going to do, increases the chances that you're going to make it happen.
Very much. It's my motto. It's do it and prove it. So, you just set the mindset and you just do whatever you need to do, whatever obstacles, whatever challenges come your way to push through it and be triumphant. So, definitely a lot of wonderful information, Mike, and thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. How can our audience find you if they're out on the web doing their technology thing and trying to get in touch with you?
Yeah, a couple of different ways. One is you can type my name, you can Google my name, and I'll be one of the top 2 or 3. Not the only one that pops up. Lejeune is actually a little bit more of a common name than I thought. But you can find me also at my website, which is lightingthepath.net. Is another way. You can actually also, I do a YouTube series that I do what you're doing now, where I interview C-suite individuals, leaders who are charting courses, and it's called Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. So I've got a YouTube series, and we strip the audio out, so you can also find me on podcasts with that. And then every now and then I drop something called Moments with Mike, which is they're reels now. They started off as podcasts, but they're 1-minute reels that are just sharing thoughts and steps to take. And so you can look for me on, yes, I am on TikTok. You won't see me dance or sing, but you can find me there on Instagram too.
Yep. And I follow you on all of them and definitely have a lot of value that you bring to the table. So thank you, Mike, for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us today. You are definitely an inspiration. You are my role model and a trailblazer in the industry. To our listeners today, thank you for joining us for another episode of Storytellers. Stay tuned for more captivating tales from exceptional speakers, authors, trainers, coaches, consultants, and the members of the Houston chapter of the National Speakers Association. I'm Beth Rohani, signing off until next time.